Hi, my name's Ollie, and in this Politics Explained video, I'm going to go through the best ways to revise for A-level politics. I'm going to start by looking at the key mistakes people often make and how not to revise in A-level politics. I'm then going to explain why you should use a revision tracker rather than a revision plan. From there, I'm going to look at the best ways to revise in A-level politics, focusing in particular on essay planning and essay writing. And then finally, I'm going to give you a bit of an example of how you might go about planning your revision and doing the revision for a particular week. The complete PDF guide you can see on your screen, you can find for free on the Politics Explained website, as well as a really useful template for the revision tracker that I'm going to go through in this video. On the Politics Explained website, you can also find loads of other resources to help you in your politics A level, including detailed essay plans, textbooks that update throughout the year, and a place to sign up for tutoring if you're interested. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. Yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So starting off with 5 key things you shouldn't do, so how not to revise for A-level politics. The first key, and this is the most important one, is don't just read through your notes, and this applies to the videos on the Politics Explained YouTube channel that go through the content as well. Don't just mindlessly watch them. Notes and videos are definitely useful for understanding the content and reading through them and making them is really, really useful. But if you simply just read through them, that's not going to help you memorize the content or prepare you for answering the questions in the exam. When you're revising, you need to actively test yourself and force yourself to think in the same way you're going to have to think in the exam. Not only is that going to build the connections to help you memorize the content, it's also going to give you continued practice of what you're going to be doing in the exam. So if you do use notes or videos, you should always test yourself as you go and then look at the notes or videos to check if you are right. And this will help you to understand and memorize the content. The second thing, and this is a trap that a lot of people easily fall into, is just revising things you're already good at. Revision's difficult and it's infinitely more boring than the loads of other things you could be doing with your time. And as a result, it's really easy to fall into the trap of only revising the topics you're good at and know really well, or only revising the topics that are easier and enjoyable. Be careful because this won't prepare you well for the exam. You need to know the whole of the course really, really well, and there's loads of different parts of A-level politics. That's really, really important. The third thing is to not revise without a plan. Revising without a plan and a clear idea of how you're going to cover the different topics is a recipe for disaster. If you do so, you're more likely to kind of waste time thinking that you're revising, when in reality you're not really that focused, you're not getting that much done, and you're not moving towards helping you memorize the content and practicing and properly revising for your final exams. And this can result in you having to revise for far more time than you need to, as you're not really properly focused or getting much done. Not only is that not going to help you in the exam, it's also going to hurt your mental health, take you away from other parts of your life, and increase stress overall. Fourth thing is don't try and cram in A-level politics. It may have worked for you for some of your GCSEs. It's definitely not going to work for any of your A-levels, and especially not going to work for A-level politics because there's just too much content. You need to fully understand this content and know how to implement it in essays. Don't just leave it to the last minute and try and cram, whether through the essay plans you put on the Politics Explained website or other resources. Just doing things last minute and cramming is not going to work. You need to actively work with them and practice throughout the year in order to do well in A-level politics. And the fifth thing, I think this is really important, is don't revise too much. Working hard and revising consistency is really important, and it's necessary to hit the top grades in A-level politics, and you should definitely work hard and revise consistently. But if you try to revise every single second of every single day, it's only going to stress you out and harm your mental health. Your focus will naturally decrease the longer you revise on a particular day. So if you try and revise for 4 or 5 hours on your A levels after after school every single day, that kind of fourth or fifth hour is really not very useful because it's not that productive. You're not focusing that much. It's taking you away from other things, which is going to harm your mental and physical health and stress you out. And that's ultimately going to mean that you do worse in your exams as well. So definitely work hard and revise consistently and have a plan to do a certain amount of revision each week. But don't overstress yourself or over revise because firstly, there are so many more things in life that are more important than your A levels. And ultimately, if you really stress yourself out and try and revise every second of every day, it's ultimately going to harm your grades as well. They're the key things to avoid. What we're going to have a look at now before the key different ways to revise for each topic is how to make an overall plan. And what I really suggest is making a revision tracker rather than a revision plan. There's a lot of content in A-level politics, and you need to make sure that you revise everything and have enough time to do so. And the revision tracker is the perfect way to do that. So what's different between a revision tracker and a revision plan? So the problem with revision plans is, and what I mean by this is something you may have done during your GCSEs or may have done in the past, where you try to plan weeks in advance or months in advance. This is what I'm going to revise on these particular days to make sure I cover everything. Therefore, by the exam, I'm going to have covered everything. Definitely better than not having a plan at all, but they're flawed for a number of reasons. The key thing being that things change. Some topics are going to take longer than you expected. Some topics are going to be worse at than you expect and need to devote more time to and revise again, whilst others won't take as long and you don't need to revise again. And crucially, that means that a revision plan isn't responsive to what you need to revise the most based on how difficult you found different topics when revising. So instead of a plan, what I really recommend is a revision tracker. And there's a tracker here you can see on the screen, and you can access this for free on the Politics Explained website. Download it as a spreadsheet and edit it however you want. But effectively, what it does is, rather than planning for weeks and months in advance for what you're going to revise, it allows you to continually track what you've revised and how well you know different topics. And that allows you to make sure that you revise everything and to select the most pressing things you need to revise on a week-by-week basis, based on how little you've revised them and how bad you are at them, whilst being flexible and recognizing that things are going to change. So, how does a revision tracker work? So it's a spreadsheet that breaks down politics A-level into all of its different topics that you'll need to revise. And I've done this for you. And I broke it down particularly in relation to the kind of groups of questions that can come up in the exam and what's useful, what topics are useful to revise together. And I've added in here, these all expand out once you download the spreadsheet. The key essay questions from the essay plans that you can use to practice that topic. So after you revise the topic, so say you start, it's going to be completely blank. And once you've revised the topic, as you see here, I've kind of put in an example. You write in the date that you revised it. And you can also add a colour, so red, orange, yellow, green, dark green, based on how confident you are in that topic. And you can also, there's also a column here to add notes as well. And what this means is effectively that when you plan out each week what you're going to revise, you look at your revision tracker, look at what you've revised so far. So for example here, we've done revision session, so we revised everything once for UK politics. And by the time we decided to go into revising things for the second time, effectively what you see here is I decided to revise the things that I was worse at. So started with the things that I rated myself as not knowing very well as red, and you go to start these and start by revising these, and then you track, okay, what's the improvement? And then you can see on the left over here, overall, how effective you are at the different topics, so that when you decide next to revise something, you pick the ones you're worst at, and this also allows you to kind of overall track that you're revising everything. So as I said, so when you're planning when to revise each day or week, you pick out the topics you haven't revised in a long time and are the weakest at. And in the long term, this means that you'll revise everything you need and put more time into the topics you struggle with the most, even if this is less fun. So, as I said, on the Politics Explained website, you can find and download our recommended revision tracker for free and then edit it however you want. Not only does this kind of save the time of making the tracker yourself, as I said, it also breaks the kind of topics down into the groups of questions you can be asked in the exam, and gives you the key essay questions to practice when revising each topic. If you've got any questions about how to use a tracker, let me know in the comments. So that's a tracker. What we're going to have a look at now is the best ways to revise each topic. By far the most effective revision method for A-level politics is making and testing yourself with essay plans. They should be central to how you revise for a number of reasons. So they make sure you're focusing on the content arguments that are likely to come up in the exams. They make sure you practice how to answer exam questions as you go, in the same way you're going to have to in the exam. When you sit down in the exam, you can see a question, have to plan it, and have to come up with an argument, and you have to do that quite quickly. Essay planning practices that immediately. And also in the last 2 years, the Edexcel questions that have come up have been less cross-cutting than previous topics and more predictable. And it's therefore likely that questions very similar to the ones that you revise will come up in the exam. So the Politics Explained essay plans, banks of essay plans on the website, pretty much 3/4 of those came up in each exam. Not the exact questions, but very similar questions on the overall topic, and they were very useful. So essay plans are really useful in terms of prepping for the exact questions or the kind of types of questions that are going to come up in the exam. So if you have a bank of detailed essay plans for every topic, you'll be prepared for the exam. You should know these plans well, but also use them to practice different, more difficult questions that could come up in the exam. So it's not just about memorizing the particular plans you have. So which plans should you make? So you should make sure that the bank of essay plans you have cover the key questions that are likely to come up in the exam. You should also make sure that they're detailed enough and include key arguments and examples, which allow you, by the time you get much closer to the exams, to mainly revise from them. If they're not detailed at all, you can't mainly revise for them because you don't have enough detail, enough examples, and you need to go back to your notes. If they're really detailed, you can mainly, and you have them covering kind of almost every topic, you can mainly just revise for them and use them, use the knowledge and the arguments in them and adapt them to different questions that may come up. Even if you don't use the essay plans on the Politics Explained website, you can preview all of the questions they're on for free and plan these questions yourself. Crucially, the thing you don't want to do with essay plans is once they're made or you've purchased them from the website or found them wherever you do find them, don't just read through them. You need to actively use them to test yourself and practice answering different questions. As I kind of mentioned at the start with notes as well, it's not just about reading through things, you need to actually test yourself to help yourself memorize them and practice for the exam. So after picking a topic to revise, what you do is pick out a couple of the essay plan titles and have a go at writing them out in detail yourself without looking at the essay plan yet. And it's also a great idea at the end of that to practice an introduction. So you make yourself think about, practice your also writing introductions, which is the first thing you're immediately going to do in the exam. So it should hopefully calm your nerves by the time you get into the exam if you've done this hundreds of times. But it also forces you to think of the argument. What are you going to argue in relation to the essay? Once you've finished practicing yourself, then and only then look at the essay plans to compare and see how you could have done it differently, / other things you could have added to the plan, and then add them in a different colour. The essay plans on the website are very detailed and you won't be able to fit everything in them in a timed essay. But the idea is that you can pick out the points and examples you feel most confident in. So don't feel like you have to include everything or completely structure it in the same way as those plans. There are different ways you can answer essays, but they should help you kind of compare and think of things you could add. And then finally, you should practice how you would adapt these essay plans to different, more difficult questions that come up. So these titles aren't the only ones that are going to come up in the exam. So you need to practice it by looking at past papers. At the bottom of the Politics Explained essay plans, there's also a number of different difficult questions to adapt the plan to that you can think about, okay, how might I answer this slightly differently but using similar content. So it's about then, okay, say I've revised a couple of questions on electoral systems, one being evaluate the view that first past post should be scrapped, and one being evaluate the view that first past post isn't the most effective electoral system in use in the UK. I might then look through some past papers or look at the bottom of those plans to find a more difficult question to practice to see, okay, how would I do this one? And force yourself to, because that's what you're going to be doing in the exam. Often it is going to be slightly different questions, more difficult questions that you're going to need to answer. So that's essay plans, again, with the key principle of don't just read through them, but use them, force yourself to practice them, and effectively do what you're going to be doing in the exam. That brings us on really nicely to the second key component of your revision, and that should be practicing answering questions. So you should combine essay planning with practicing exam questions, including essays, source questions, and full mock papers. This is really, really important in making sure you're confident in your essay writing, exam technique, and in your timings. The students I've tutored kind of hundreds of students by now, and the students who see the biggest improvements are those who practice essay writing in time conditions regularly throughout the A-level. If you're revising a topic, don't do these for the same question you've just looked at an essay plan on. So, as I said, say you just revised those 2 electoral systems essay plans, choose a different one to practice writing an essay on. Because it's going to force you to think and kind of plan it out as well, rather than just copying down from the essay plan effectively. Or do a source question. So you can find these different questions, as I said, at the bottom of the Politics Explained essay plans, and there's soon going to be a kind of bank of original source questions you can use to practice on the Politics Explained website as well. It can't be stressed enough how important it is to do multiple mock papers before your exam. A-level politics timings are really, really tight. You need to be confident in an exam scenario, and the only way to do that is through practice and working out what timings work for you and how long you have to spend on each question. So you can be as prepared as you want, but if you spend too long on one question and can't finish another one in the final exam as a result, you're going to drop a lot of marks. So the two key things I recommend are using essay planning and combining that with practicing answering questions as well and full mock papers and doing them in time conditions. Flashcards are also really important, but I really wouldn't recommend only using flashcards to revise. I think the basis of your revision should be in essay planning. The key reason we recommend essay plans and practice questions is that they help you practice your evaluation and analysis, not just your knowledge. And flashcards often don't really do that. So the most effective way, in my opinion, to use flashcards is together with your essay plans. So when you practice writing out your essay and you realise the things you've missed and add them in a different colour, those things that you've missed you can add to flashcards. And then whenever you have a spare 20 minutes, whenever you're on a bus or whatever it is, just test yourself on them to help you memorise them, and that will help you by the time you next go to revise that topic, and you'll be much better in terms of those essay plans. There are also other things you can do. So of course we recommend essay plans and practicing exam questions, but there are other things you could do. But my key advice is just to make sure they're using the principles outlined at the beginning of the guide. So make sure you're practicing in a way that prepares for the exam, thinking about the key debates and questions that will come up in the exam, and make sure that you force yourself to you test yourself. So you force yourself to think of what you know rather than just reading through notes or copying things down. You need to test yourself, even if that's difficult. That's the most effective way to revise. So try and recall information, plan a question without your notes, and then check it against them. So other possible methods you could use whilst kind of implementing these principles are mind maps or blurting on a topic and then filling in a different colour what you didn't know. Explaining out loud to a friend a key topic, so kind of trying to teach can be one of the best ways to revise as well. But again, just use those principles we've mentioned throughout the video. Final thing that I'm going to do is give you an example of how to revise each week. So this is what I do each week when revising for A-level politics. So I'd start by working out how much time do you have to revise for A-level politics that week. Make sure it's realistic. Don't say you're going to revise 15 hours for A-level politics and you've got your other A-levels as well. It's just not going to happen. So you might decide you kind of across your frees, your studies, and some time you have after school and maybe at the weekend as well, you're going to revise for 6 hours on A-level politics in total that week. What I then do is look at the revision tracker and pick out the topics that I'm going to revise, and I pick them based on the ones I haven't revised in a while and the ones I'm least confident in, so the ones that are coloured in orange or coloured in red. So I might decide that I've got 6 hours. I'm going to do 3 topics, 2 hours each. And pick my weakest topic from UK government, UK politics, and core political ideas. What I then do is base the revision for each of these topics around essay planning. This is assuming you've already made or purchased the plans from the website. When you're first revising a topic, you should instead start by making the ideal essay plans if you're not going to purchase them. So start by finding two or three key essay titles of the topic, and these are in the revision tracker next to it. And try to plan the first one without looking at the essay plan you already have. Just kind of force yourself in detail to write it down, type it out, whatever it is, as if you're going to be doing it in the exam, and almost it should be really detailed. So the key arguments you're going to use, the examples you're going to use, what you're going to, the judgment you're going to make. Sometimes you're going to know very little, and that's not going to take much time. You're going to have to compare. Sometimes, especially by the time you get close to the exam, you're going to be much better at that. And you should, by the time you finish, have something very similar to the essay plan, or even if it's not exactly the same, a really good answer to the question. What you should then do is compare it with the essay plan you've got, whether that's one you've already made or one for the Politics Explained website, and then fill in what you've missed in a different colour. And then to help memorise these key things that you've missed, you can put them in flashcards and potentially revise later in the week or whenever you have a spare kind of 10-15 minutes. Then repeat this with the other essay titles. So the key basis for each topic is focus on the essay planning. I wouldn't really recommend, say you're doing 3 topics, to do an essay on every single topic, because I don't think you're going to have time to do that every single week. But maybe for 1 or 2 of those topics, I'd try practice 1 or 2 essay questions or source questions. So just 1 essay question per week in total, or 2 per week, and practice it in time conditions. And then once every couple of months, I'd probably do a full mock paper as well. And then crucially, using your revision tracker, once you finish each topic, change its colour on the revision tracker to show how well you know the topic, and recognise that you're of course going to know more straight after revising it. So mainly basis on how well you knew the topic at the start when you're trying to recall it without looking at the essay plans. And then effectively you repeat that each week, and what you'll see is your revision tracker will gradually fill up. You would have revised everything, and then you go back to revising everything again, and it will make sure that you're revising everything, you're not missing anything out, and you're starting with and focusing on the things that you struggle with the most, and that's the key way you're going to be best prepared for the exam. So yeah, that's the key way how not to revise, how we recommend revising crucially with essay plans and practicing essay questions, and how a revision tracker can really help you. This full guide, as I mentioned at the start, you can find for free on the Politics Explained website, and you can also find a template revision tracker to use, which should really help you plan your revision. Let me know any questions you've got in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you, and I'll see you in the next video.